Let's begin this academic listening test. Today we're going to split this into 3 parts. First, we're going to preview some vocabulary and do the listening. Then we're going to do some dictation questions. And finally, you're going to answer the questions and check your answers with me. So let's start by looking at the topic. The topic for today is coming from psychology or maybe biology. So if you are in college, you might take a psychology or biology class and you might have this topic. The topic is twins. And today we're going to practice not only your listening, but also your note-taking skills. And we're going to practice taking notes using a T-chart, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So first, let's preview some important vocabulary. The first word is gender and sex. Now, sometimes these words are used interchangeably, but we know now more about the difference between gender and sex. Sex is the biological sex that you are born with, so male, female, but gender is the sex that you identify with. So gender is a little bit different because someone can be born male but may identify more with the female gender. The next word is twins, and twins are 2 babies that are born at the same time from the same mother. Number 3, identical. Identical or identical. Identical is an adjective that means exactly the same. Number 4, fertilize. Fertilize is a verb, and fertilize is when we have a male and female that come together to make a new life. And we can use the word fertilize to talk about humans when they make a baby, to talk about plants, and some other things too. When we're thinking about humans, we're thinking, as you can see in the picture here, about when a sperm fertilizes the egg. And when that happens, a new life is formed. Number 5, womb. The word womb is the same as uterus, and that is the organ inside a woman where the fetus or the new baby develops. And number 6, genes or DNA. Genes is the genetic material that is inside of us. So your DNA or your genes is your genetic material that you pass on to children if you have children. Okay, so you can pause the video if you want to. You can take a screenshot of the vocabulary. You can take notes about these new words if you see new words here. But we're going to move on to the next part, which is to start thinking about the listening that we're going to do. So first of all, when you're listening to a teacher or a professor in school, it's not possible for you to remember all the information that they tell you, especially if it's a lecture that's like 1 hour or 1 hour and a half long. It's just too much information. So when you're doing this kind of listening, you want to focus on the most important information. To help you with that, you can ask, what does the teacher want me to know? So think about that while you're listening. What do they want you to come away with when the class is over? Now, in order for you to remember the information that your professor is telling you, and you're going to need that information to take tests or do other things after, you need to take notes. And in order to take notes, you're going to have to listen and pay attention. What's the most important information? And then write it down in a short way. Now, to help you write that information down in a short way, you can try to use some abbreviations, use shorter sentences, focus on the most important words, but most importantly, don't try to write every word. And finally, today, you're going to hear about some differences between 2 things. And the most effective way of taking notes when you're listening to differences is to use a T-chart. And a T-chart just means that you make a T shape on your paper and you write down information about one thing on one side and the other thing on the other side. You can see an example in this picture here. Okay, so let's move on to think about the topic. So today we're going to hear about twins. And you're going to notice that you're going to hear information about dizygotic and monozygotic twins. And those are just scientific words. I'll explain them in a moment. But before we start listening to this topic, take just a quick moment to think about the topic of twins. What do you already know about this topic? Are you a twin? Do you have twins in your family? Do you know someone who's a twin? Do you know how twins are formed or why people have twins? And do you know anything about what these two types of twins might be? What are these words, dizygotic and monozygotic? So thinking about the topic a little bit before we start listening will actually help you to understand more. We're going to get started with the listening. The listening is not very long. And I want you to get a piece of paper, or you can use your computer. And I'm going to be giving this as if I were a professor talking to a class. You're going to listen and get down as much of the most important information as you can. If you need to listen 2 or 3 or 4 times, that's okay. All right, so let's get started. How much do you know about twins? Twins occur in about 1 out of every 85 births. The phenomenon of twin births is important to the field of psychology because when psychologists study twins, they can learn more about how people are different due to genes and their environment. So first, let's take a look at 2 types of twins. The 2 types of twins are dizygotic and monozygotic, also known as fraternal and identical. The difference between these 2 types comes from how they begin life. The word dizygotic is made up of the prefix di, di, which means 2, and the root zygote, which means egg. So dizygotic means from 2 eggs. Dizygotic, or we also say fraternal twins, come from the fertilization of 2 different eggs at the same time. In other words, 2 babies are created around the same time, resulting in 2 different babies developing in the mother's womb. On the other hand, monozygotic means from 1 egg, because the prefix mono means 1. What happens with monozygotic twins is that 1 egg is fertilized, but later it splits into 2. This means that the babies have identical DNA. Because fraternal or dizygotic twins result from 2 separate eggs from the beginning, they can be just as different as any other siblings. If you have brothers or sisters, you can think about this. Are you exactly the same as your siblings? Probably not. And the same thing with fraternal twins. They can look very different. One can be tall and the other can be short. Or one can be a male and one can be a female. They can have different sexes. Just like how brothers and sisters can be very different from one another. However, monozygotic twins are identical because they have the same genes, so they are almost exactly the same. They must be the same sex, both males or both females. They usually look the same, and it can be very difficult to tell them apart. If you've ever seen identical twins, maybe you've noticed that it can be hard to recognize who is who. However, as they age, they may start to look more different as they develop their own personalities and styles. Finally, identical twins often have the same voice and very similar personalities. Why do they have such similar personalities? That's a question for researchers. So let's take a quick look at how twins can be helpful in the field of psychology. For psychologists, identical twins are useful because these twins can demonstrate the role that DNA plays in personality. For example, if identical twins have the same DNA but very different personalities, this helps psychologists understand the role that the environment, so the world around them, not their DNA, plays in influencing people's personalities. On the other hand, if identical twins are raised in different homes, so this would be if the twins are adopted into different families, they grew up in a different environment, but they have very similar personalities, this would show the influence of DNA on personality. Okay, so that's it for the listening. If you would like to go back and watch again, that's totally fine. Right now, we're going to go on to the next part, which is a dictation. So for the next part, what we're going to do is I'm going to say 6 questions. You're going to listen carefully to the questions and write them down. After we do that, you're going to check the dictation questions, and then we'll move on to part 3, where we'll answer the questions and then you'll check your answers. So let's go to the dictation, and for this part, you're going to need another piece of paper, or you can use your computer. You're going to listen and you're going to write the questions that you hear or type them on your computer. Now, with a dictation, this kind of listening is different because you're not just listening for the most important information. Instead, you're testing your ability to listen word for word. So for the dictation questions, you're going to write word for word exactly what you hear. Don't forget to use a capital letter at the beginning and correct punctuation. Okay, so let's get started with the dictation questions. Number 1. What does the word dizygotic mean? What does the word dizygotic mean? Okay, if you need more time, click pause. And number 2, what are the 2 types of twins? What are the 2 types of twins? What are the 2 types of twins? Number 3, how are fraternal twins formed? How are fraternal twins formed? How are fraternal twins formed? Number 4, why do identical twins have the same DNA? Why do identical twins have the same DNA? Number 5, are identical twins always born with the same sex? Are identical twins always born with the same sex? Are identical twins always born with the same sex? And number 6, why are twins important to researchers in the field of psychology? Why are twins important to researchers in the field of psychology? Why are twins important to researchers in the field of psychology? So, if you need more time, you can go back, listen to the questions again. We're going to go to the next part where we're going to check the questions. So let's check your questions. Just take a look at the questions that you see here and check the questions that you wrote on your paper. Did you get all of the words? Did you spell them correctly? Feel free to pause the video and check those questions. And then we're going to go to part 3. Now we're going to answer the questions. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the notes that you took while you were listening to me talk about twins, take your notes, and answer the questions that you see here. Write complete sentences so that you can practice the correct grammar. Now, this is a kind of task that you might have to do in a high school, college, university class. Maybe you'll listen to a professor, give a long lecture, take notes, and then the professor might give you some questions to help you review the information. So pause the video, take as much time as you need to answer the questions, and then when you're ready, we will check your answers. All right, so let's check your answers to the questions. Number 1, what does the word dizygotic mean? Dizygotic means from 2 eggs. Now, if you want to give a more complete answer, you can. You can say dizygotic means from 2 eggs because di means 2 and zygote means egg. Number 2, what are the 2 types of twins? The 2 types of twins are fraternal and identical, or dizygotic and monozygotic. Now, there are a couple of different ways you could answer this. You could also say the 2 types of twins are dizygotic, or fraternal, and monozygotic, or identical. Okay, moving on to number 3. How are fraternal twins formed? Fraternal twins are formed by the fertilization of 2 different eggs at the same time. Number 4, why do identical twins have the same DNA? Identical twins have the same DNA because they were originally 1 egg that split into 2. And number 5, are identical twins always born with the same sex? Yes, they are. Identical twins are always the same sex because they share the same DNA. Now, do you need to have the second sentence in your answer? No. The question was a yes/no question, so as long as you answer yes, yes they are, that's enough. If you want to add the second sentence that explains why, that's fine. And number 6, why are twins important to researchers in the field of psychology? Twins are important to researchers in the field of psychology because they can show how DNA and the environment influence people's personalities. Maybe you answered the last one a little bit differently. You might say something like, because they can show how DNA influences people's personalities. That would also be acceptable. Good job. Listening like this and answering questions is not easy. Note-taking is also not easy, but it's great practice and it's also a really good way for you to improve your English. Today, take a moment to reflect on your work. Today you did listening and note-taking, you did a dictation, and you answered questions. And ask yourself, what was easy and what was difficult? And how can you improve? I do these kinds of lessons all the time with my students, so I will be making more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video, come back again soon, and I'll have more listening practice videos for you.